Congratulations on the sneakiest Google prize. That was well done. I was tempted to ask a question like, how many pencils do you think we have in the SparkPage office? But I have no prize. So thanks everyone for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Just a word of warning with my Irish accent. If I speak really fast, just give me a little one of those and I'll slow down. I get really excited about A/B testing, but who doesn't, eh? So I'm going to talk today about A/B testing onboarding, and onboarding meaning welcoming new users who sign up to your app, activating them, retaining them, and stopping them from leaving. So to explain a bit about why onboarding matters, or why this talk, is this graph which I took from Andrew Chen's blog, which he calls the cliff of death, which is a lovely fun name for those of us who stare at graphs like this all day. And on the left, it looks like 1,000 people downloading your app, and then a day later, I wonder how many are still using it, and it just plummets. And then you go sign up on board day 1, day 7, day 30, and it looks like this. And I won't bore you with the stats because you've heard them all before, but the vast majority of people who download and open your app once won't come back again. So this talk is around what kind of techniques and tactics can we use to make that graph look less punishing. A little bit about me: I'm the co-founder and CEO of SparkPage. We started around 3 years ago in Dublin, Ireland. We're a 15-person company, and we're based in Soma and back in Dublin as well. My background: I used to work product marketing in telecoms, where we used to do all this stuff as well. So telecoms, like if you imagine Verizon and AT&T, they have customers who pay them $20 a month, and that's just the same as Netflix and Spotify. And they have customers who pay them, refill a prepaid phone, and that's just like gaming, just like any in-app purchase. So they've built all these kind of models of customer engagement over the last 20 years. And what we do on a daily basis is kind of translate them into the new world of apps, of websites, and of user retention. So this talk, it's about onboarding, but it's quite a wide space. So I'm going to focus specifically around user messaging. So this is emails, push notifications, SMS messages, the kind of outreach you can do to your users to get them on board. And this reason is twofold. One, it's my area of expertise. So there is onboarding you can do within your app. You can do customer interviews, you can do A/B testing within the app. But I'm going to be talking about this just because I know it better, and also because it's often the easiest place to test. So testing a technique with changing an email is often a lot easier than making a change within the app. You might also, while I'm going through, ask, why did you call this A/B tests? Really, these are growth hacks or case studies.
We'll see if we can get the mic working. Sorry.
Am I just shouting? Am I? Any better? There we go. I'll start again. No, I won't. So going through this, you may ask,
Yeah. We'll keep talking.
Will I project?
Yes, project.
Is my Shakespearean experience. So you might ask, why A/B tests? These are really case studies. You might traditionally call them growth hacks. But the reason we always use the term A/B test is because I'm going to show you great case studies of what worked for other people. But what I'm not saying is, hey, these will work for you. More so, hey, these are inspirations for things you should experiment with in your business. And you should try, test and see if they are actually beneficial to you. So that's just the caveat with all of this. Some great learnings, some great experience, so I'll dive right in. So the first point is get focused. And this is a little case study on welcome emails that just shows kind of a wider principle about if you're trying to sell too many things to your customer, if you're trying to communicate too much to them when they first join the app, it can be overkill. So this is a sample of 2 emails. One that welcomes the user and says, hey there, thanks for signing up. Here's the very next thing we want you to do on the left. And one that has, hey there, thanks for signing up. Did you know you can do activity A, activity B, and activity C? And time and time again, when we run this experiment, we see the first one on the left always outperforms. So on the left, when you're asking, when somebody is signing up to your service or downloading your app for the first time, what you need to be thinking is, what is the very next thing I need them to do? So when you sign up to Facebook, they could be teaching you about games, they could be showing you about how to upload a photo, they could be doing a million things, but they don't. They know that what they want you to do is start adding friends, so that's all they tell you about. That last email was an example from Optimizely, and they found that when they cut from 3 call to actions down to 1, they got 13% more clicks in total within the email. This was a nice little example just to illustrate the point from Headspace, where they have their Start a Take 10 Now, which is their meditation app. But it's really tempting because we know our apps and we know how wonderful all of the features are within our app, and we're bursting with excitement to tell new users about all the glorious features. But if you can hone it down to just one single thing that you want a user to do when they install the app, if there's one action you want them to take, it's both a good practice for yourselves. It gets you focused on what is your core value that you're delivering to the user, but it's also way more effective, and we see it all the time. Number 2, get amped. I'm new to America, so I'm trying to pick up the lingo. Get pumped. The power of motivation. So one thing we always see is people, again, because we spend so much of our time in our own products, building our own apps, that we want to tell everybody about all the wonderful features it has. So usually the onboarding messages, the emails, everything we send are very feature focused. But when you switch that to thinking about the user and thinking what motivates them, why are they downloading this app? Is it for entertainment? Is it to kill 10 minutes on the train? Is it to reconnect with old friends? Remembering what motivates them and then reminding them of that and using that in the onboarding flow is much better. So I'll use the Headspace, the meditation app again, and instead of saying, here's how to use Headspace or here's how to use the app, they say, life's too short to feel so stressed. So it's a nice little message reminding you not about using the app, but of the benefit. What motivated you to get using this app in the first place? And for a meditation app, you were probably feeling stressed before you downloaded it or overwhelmed. So they like to remind you of that during the onboarding experience. Here's 2, and it's slightly cut off at the top, but this is relay rides. They're like Airbnb for cars. And the email on the left shows rent any car from A to Z, and it's very functional. So on Relay Car, there's hundreds of thousands of cars, really easy. Whereas on the right, they're really tapping into the motivation of why might somebody rent a car? Because they live in the city, they don't own a car, but this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, take the road less traveled. Why not get out of the city for the weekend? So it's talking nothing to do with the car, the service itself, but the motivator behind why the customer would use the service. And it's time and time again when we find people struggling with their onboarding or emails that aren't getting clicked or an onboarding experience that isn't being followed, probably the number one thing we start with is just asking what motivates a user, and are you helping reignite that motivation every time you talk to them? And again, it's a really good practice for yourself just to ask, what is the motivation? Why is somebody downloading my app? What are they trying to achieve? And this is a wonderful graphic from Samuel Hullock of useronboard.com, which I love, which says, for any of you Mario fans out there, this is what your business sells, is the flower, but this is, this isn't what your business sells. This is. It's not the middle part. It's the result. You're not selling, the product to your customer. You're selling what you're helping your customer become, which is, maybe it's entertained, maybe it's better at their job, maybe it's a date, whatever your product happens to be. And as Samuel always says, you need to onboard the user, not the product. So onboarding is all about getting the user bought in, motivated and psyched about using the product, or, as we said, getting amped up. Preventative maintenance is another really important part. So after you think about what is motivating to users, why are they signing up, then you can start to look at removing barriers. So removing barriers looks like trying to think, okay, if somebody is motivated and they're trying to get through the onboarding process of our product, what could possibly be getting in the way? What are the friction points here? So identify the friction points and then preemptively address them. And I'll go through these. So a quantitative way of identifying friction points would be to look at your analytics. So here on this Kissmetrics screenshot, you're seeing this many people visited the site, signed up, activated, and were billed. And you can look at a graph like this or a funnel like this and see, what are the key drop-off points. So we see a massive drop-off from here to here. From the third to the fourth looks okay. So, and then the screenshot below is our own product, SparkPage, which is showing, these are the steps of somebody onboarding within your product, and you can see, start looking at your analytics, digging in, seeing what are the friction points, and seeing, okay, well, most people who sign up get integrated fine, but then they really drop off at step number 4. That's where we're really seeing the pain. You can also take a qualitative approach, and this is one we really love doing, where when you've seen a part of your product. So people do step 1 to 3, no problem. They install the app, they create a profile, they invite their first friend, everything's going great, but then you need them to list an item for sale. Say you're a marketplace, and the drop off there is massive. Instead of starting to try send emails or do pop-ups to encourage them to send a sale, sometimes the easiest thing to do is to email them and say, hey, why didn't you, what was going wrong? You send that out to a couple of hundred, get a couple of hundred people receiving that email, and in a few days you'll start to notice patterns back, like I didn't understand why, or I was worried it wasn't secure. The Android app keeps crashing on me. You get all these great answers back that you never expect, and then comes the step of preemptive removal of barriers. So it's a little small for the slide, but what you're doing then is you're saying, okay, well, everybody replied and said, I'm worried it's not secure. So what we're going to do is, if somebody is stuck at that step for more than half a day, we're going to email them, or we're going to pop up in the app and say, did you know this is fully secure? And here's a customer testimonial talking about how well it worked. So finding what the friction points are, identifying really why people are getting stuck, and then preemptively getting them unstuck is a great way just to grease the wheels on your onboarding process. Here's a little look. This is the only small bit of self-promotion I'll include in this, but this is what it looks like in SparkPage. So we have our steps in the funnel here, and we have the ability just to drop in an email that says, if somebody gets stuck at this step, this is a little looping GIF, we can just drop in an email and that says after a day, are they still stuck here? Let's send them an email and proactively guide them through. So again, that's about reaching out to customers beforehand. So number 4, the waltz, or how to perfect timing. This isn't one I'm going to go into too much detail on, but just to keep it as one to think about. So if I skip forward a slide, what we see a huge amount is debate within teams over. There's always a split, and I can never predict. I used to think it was the tech team would think one thing and the product team the other, but some people think, oh, we've got to send them more messages. We've got to be proactive. They've just downloaded the app. Let's send them a push notification. And the other people say, any sort of communication is spam. You cannot do that to our users. And it usually ends up with people nearly punching each other. It's one of these really emotional things. And time and time again, we've found that all you can do is test it. I mean, it's the perfect thing to diffuse a bit of emotion from your boardroom meeting and just run an A/B test. So the Obama campaign last election, by the end of it, we're sending 5 emails a day. And I love this quote from the head of email for Obama. Said, at the end of the day, we had 18 or 20 riders going at this stuff for as many hours a day as they could stay awake. The data didn't show any negative consequences to sending more. Now, a campaign is a little bit unique because a period in time, but they were religiously A/B testing these things and found that there was no negative consequences. I've heard people in companies we're not working with, but people like Expedia and Yelp, say that they started increasing the amount of emails they send, and it had no negative effect. And one thing we always forget is we're all business people, right? So we're all getting 100 emails a day, but the average Gmail user gets around 8 to 13 emails a day. And that's why when Groupon send an email twice a day, people read them and they open them because it's one of the only emails they got that day. And it's a nice, pleasant experience. So it's really hard to kind of I find it hard a lot to put myself in the shoes of somebody who doesn't get 100 emails a day, and imagine what bliss that must be like. So these are, this is a question. I'm just saying, please don't fight. A/B test the timing of your messages. Surprise, or the art of unexpected value. So here's a neat little thing we found, just a little trick for you to try. So on the top row here, and I'll breeze through it quickly, we're talking about a sequence of messages we sent over a couple of days. And the very last one, this was introducing somebody to a new music artist. So when they signed up to a musician's newsletter, said, here's an introduction to the musician, and then 6 days later send them some YouTube videos, and then, hey, like me on Facebook, and then here's my album, would you like to buy it? And what we A/B tested was just 2 days before putting in an unexpected gift, which was, here's a free I think it was a free acoustic set. Here's a little free acoustic album, something that cost us no money to give away, and that doubled the conversion rate of the album sales. And we do it in a B2B perspective. When somebody's free trial is coming up, we usually send them like a few free ebooks, something like that, something that you have for free on the website anyway, or any just nice little unexpected gift. Not to trick somebody into loving you, but just to be a bit more decent about, so it doesn't feel like the only time you're emailing them is to ask for something. So give a little to get a little. Hurry, so the art of urgency. This is one that, without fail, when you can appropriately put it into a message as part of your onboarding, works really well. Don't use it, don't create false urgency. We saw a games company do this really good once. They were selling, you could buy a sword for your character, and they said, quick, going out of stock soon, and for their digital good. So you can toy with the dark side as much as you want in this, but when it's timely and it's relevant, only 2 days left, hurry, offer ends soon, especially if it's seasonal or time-based. Putting that up front can really help people, like you're not forcing somebody to do it, but you're reminding them, or you're helping them make the decision, because we're all faced with so many decisions every day that if it's so much easier just to procrastinate on a decision and just to put it off to tomorrow. So a little bit of time sensitivity can really help. These guys, Doggy Loot, did it really, really well when they added to their abandoned cart reminder, which was, I saw you put dog food in the cart yesterday and you haven't checked it out today. It's a fairly standard e-commerce play. They followed up, and if it was low on stock, they put that alert into the message, and I can't remember the exact results, but the sales increased significantly. So the item added to your cart is almost sold out is the key one there. So again, it was a piece of information they had lying around. They knew that some items were going to be out of stock, and when you can add a little bit of urgency, it can really help. To use Doggy Loot again for a great example of getting more personal. So we all know that there's probably a million different ways you can segment all your users. You could say, okay, we want to start onboarding, a different onboarding flow for men and for women, and for people over 35 and under 35, and in these 3 countries. And that means, when you multiply that up, that means we have to do 18 different onboarding flows for an Italian woman over 35, and it goes crazy. So we often try to find what is the simplest question you can ask, a single question that if you knew the answer to, you could deliver a much more customized experience to. So Doggy Loot did this by asking, is your dog a large dog or a small dog? So this is their sign-up flow. So it used to be enter your email address, and now it's enter your email address, how big is your dog? And I'll read it because it's a bit blurred. Is your dog small, medium, or large? And then they were able to send you large dog deals, because you weren't buying a massive basket for a little chihuahua. It made a huge difference. Paper Style, who do wedding invites, asked, very basic, they asked, are you planning for your wedding or for a friend or relative's wedding? And when they started asking this, their email open rate went up 224%, and I think the click-through rate was 150% or something like that. So what's that one single question that you can ask that divides your, divides your user base into really helpful little thought experiment to run and to see, and then you can put that obviously into the product, into the messaging, everything like that. So tell me why Annie Lennox gets insight. One great part of the onboarding flow, especially for early stage customers, is doing things that don't scale, which we all know by now is the new mantra. But especially when you're starting out, just asking people, hey, why did you sign up? What were you hoping to? I know what I think our value proposition is, but what do you think it is? What brought you here? What got you signed up? And we found this really applicable, like in so many different places. We ask it on our blog at the moment. When somebody joins our newsletter, we say, thanks for joining the newsletter. What were you hoping to read about? I'd love to know what you found interesting. And that the feedback we've got from that goes into talks like this, goes into new blog posts we're writing, goes into new speeches. In Groove, they asked, this was their welcome email. Hey, thanks for joining. I'd like to ask a real quick question. What brought you here today? And from the answers they got, they said, this email gets a 41% response rate and has given us more business insight than any email we've ever sent. So just learning about what it is that people are, even looking at the language they're using, like what words are they using to describe your business and the value they're going to get from it, can help your app store optimization, can help your SEO, can help your marketing messaging. Just incredibly valuable to do, especially in the early days. Just very simple little email. The endowed progress effect, which is the actual name of a scientific paper, which is you're in too deep to quit now. This is a really fascinating one that we stumbled upon a little study done a few years ago that looked at the cards you get in coffee shops. And they found that on the left is what people give out, 6 stamps gets you a free, 8 stamps gets you a free coffee. And on the right, they have 10 stamps, but the first 2 are pre-stamped. So it's the exact same thing, right? You need 8 stamps to get you your next free coffee. But pre-stamped customers were twice as likely to finish the card and redeem the offer. Like twice as likely, that's insane. And they did it in coffee shops, they did it in a car wash, they repeated it in a lot of different scenarios. And we've started seeing it in tech too. It works really, really well. So what you're saying is you're pre-giving the user, starting them off not at 0, but at 10%, right? So here's an example of a piece missed. And this is a screenshot from useronboard.com looking at Duolingo. And if you can even see it, which it's hard to see, this is a little four-step progress bar for Duolingo. And the comment is that it's a progress bar, but it doesn't, oh God, I'm at 0. That's how depressing. Whereas Duolingo later actually do use this effect quite well, which is when you do lessons, when you learn language, if you don't know Duolingo, they're a language learning website. And when you learn lessons, you get experience points. But for completing your profile at the start, they start you with 10 experience points. I said, hey, you're off to the races. Well done. And it both educates you in their case that experience points are a thing, but it makes you feel like you're a little bit started. So I don't know enough about all of your apps to know if this is applicable there. But if it is, if you're trying to get users on any sort of journey, start them at 1 instead of 0 wherever you can. And then it ain't over till it's over, the win back. So we see so many people with 30-day trials or onboarding experience or looking at day 7 retention and day 30 retention and just discounting people who you attempt to activate and attempt to retain and then lose them once they're gone. So Netflix, when you leave Netflix, either after the 30-day trial or if you leave, they re-engage with you a few weeks later and say, hey, why not start a new trial? Or in this case, enjoy another free trial. In Squarespace, when your free trial is about to end, or when your free trial has ended, they wait 2 days and then they say, okay, they're not going to get you. The trial wasn't enough for whatever reason. And they send you an email and say, do you want to extend your trial by 7 days? So not giving up on users. Groove did something very similar. They had a 30-day free trial, but then they also followed up 2 weeks later, and then 6 weeks after that, and then so on and so forth, until finally they have a 90-day email. So 90 days after you've signed up, and it gets a 2% conversion rate. And you might think, okay, that's not very large, but that's 2%. 2% of users that you would have had to spend money acquiring through an ad campaign or some other method, and that polite persistence is a technique that we see rarely used, but really, really works. And all it costs is the time to write one email, and just follow up. There's so many use cases where somebody really likes the idea of your app, the idea of your service, but the timing just isn't right. And if they dislike it, if they signed up and it was something that they didn't, it's different than they thought, then they'll unsubscribe from your emails, and that's fine. If it was something that they wanted to use but just not right now, they'll be very happy that you remind them 90 days later that you still exist, that you're still there. So your next steps, if you want to implement any of these 10 techniques, is get insight, make hypothesis, and test. So I'm just circling back to the idea of A/B testing at the start, is that these are great ideas. We've seen them work really well. Some of them, like focusing on motivation, really thinking through what it is the user is going through. Some of those techniques are a bit timeless, but the other case studies take an insight, and the insight could be my slides say that it works well for somebody else. Have a hypothesis. Okay, well, if starting people with 2 stamps and a coffee card worked, I think X, Y, and Z will work for our app, and then test. Because it always, especially when you're starting out, it always feels like you don't have time to test. It always feels like, oh, we'll just make that change now and run tests later. But 6 months later, 12 months later, you are always so much happier when you run an A/B test, that you have data to back up your decisions. Because it never ends up, it doesn't tell you just about that little test. It just teaches you more about your users, who they are, what they think about your product, why they are signing up to your product. And 6 months later, you just have a much better understanding of your users. So I had a little video, but I'll skip past it in the interest of time and just go straight to Q&A. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. Quick question. To your knowledge, do you know of any studies done to determine the best way to contact users? I mean, is it just sending emails, or maybe having it appear as a notification from the app? Or has any study been done to determine what's more relevant for the user and what makes him click more likely?
Yeah, absolutely. So to repeat the question, have there been any studies done, or have I seen any data to show which contact method is the best way to re-engage with the user? So the short answer is that that is quite particular to each business, and it's one thing we always encourage our customers to test. So a lot of people come to us with a notion that, oh, email won't work for us, or oh, push notifications are too invasive for us, and quite a lot of the time we find out that that's incorrect. So like the best answer is to test that, because we've been shocked. But I know that's an answer I hate hearing, because it that's the answer to every question. So I'll say that email works really well when it's not very time sensitive. So one great example is asking for App Store reviews, right? When somebody is in the middle of using your app and you pop up on their screen to ask them for an App Store rating, you're interrupting their enjoyable experience of your app. What we found works much better is waiting until they have success in the app. So maybe if you're Uber, the first time they have, first time they have a ride in a car, or first time they complete a first level in your game, and then following up 10, 20 minutes later with an email, because that sits in the inbox, and when the user is ready to check their emails, when they're not being interrupted, that's when they go and check emails, and that's when they leave. They see, hey, would you mind rating us on the App Store, and they rate us. So email works really well for that. It works really well for more complex messages where you might need some images and a bit of text to explain what to do. And then push notifications work really well for marketing messages that feel quite like product messages. So, hey, your car is outside. Ones that work really well are, we saw you were searching for this product yesterday that was out of stock. Hey, it's back in stock now. That's kind of a marketing message, but it feels like a product message. Hey, your friend from Facebook has just joined, our social network. Why don't you connect with them and say hello? Little, small little ones that bring them back in the product to use the product experience. And then, so that's mostly where we see which message works well. And then every time we expect something to work really well, we do an A/B test and we get surprised. So, yeah. So. Sir.
So out of these 10 ideas, let's say I've done none of them. What should be the first one that I try?
So the question was, out of these 10 ideas, let's say I've done none, which is the first one that I try? So the first one I would always do with a new customer is motivation. So our bias, because we're living in the products all day, is we're thinking about features, we're building new features, we're launching new features, is always to think that we should be onboarding users by educating them about the product. But really we should be thinking about onboarding users by understanding them more and helping them be more motivated to get through the product. So getting someone incredibly excited about how much value they're going to get from your product will overcome any defaults or defects or bugs you have, because we all have them in the early days, right? So if somebody is incredibly excited, they'll overlook the user interface problems, they'll overlook anything else. But if you spend your time focusing on this latest feature, or this, here's how to do this, here's how to do that, they're never motivated enough to make it the whole way through. So the number one for me would be motivation. Yeah. Great question. Yep.
Yeah, what's your advice for someone promoting an event? Like what kind of testing or what steps should you use?
So what's my advice for somebody promoting an event? That's a great question. So most of my experience is in like onboarding and life cycle. So I guess for events, you'd probably want to, in my head, you have a kind of a line in the sand, which is your event day, and then planning your communications back from that. So that's what we do in the travel industry with travel customers. It's always the date of the event, and then T-1 day, -3, -5, and then post-event. So I'd probably start by mapping that out. Like, what's our ideal user flow 3 weeks out from the event, 2 weeks out, 1 week out? What do we need to be teaching them about? All of these things that can get them more likely to get to the event, stuff like that. So yeah, it would be something like that. And I'm guessing that's for your attendees I'm more thinking of, and for people you're trying to sell tickets to. My understanding of events is that 50% of the sales are the day you launch and announce the ticket sales, and around 50% come like 2-3 days before, and there's just a trough in the middle. So it's probably heavy promotion, 10% coupon, early bird tickets, 6 weeks before, and it's probably a lot of educational content, bigging up the speakers, reminding, we're dripping out, we have new speakers, we have this, we have that, and then the day, the week before the event, go heavy on the promotion again. So it's not my area, but that's what I've heard works well. Yep.
They say that customers sometimes don't tell you the truth when they answer the surveys.
They do. They lie.
Right. So what do you do about that? How do you design the survey better, or how do we avoid or solve that problem?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you deal with the fact that customers are liars, or often don't respond truthfully on surveys, or often don't know the truth on surveys, right? Don't understand. I used to do focus groups all the time, and I'd sometimes scream behind the glass mirror saying, of course they say they'd buy it. Can we just walk into the room and ask, okay, hand over cash? Because none of them would. And we'd walk away from the focus group thinking, this product is going to be fantastic. 9 out of 10 people said they'd buy it. So there's two splits there. So I think in one of the slides back, I split into qualitative and quantitative, right? So you're really looking for the actual answers in your qualitative stuff, right? So you're quantitative, sorry. You're looking for the actual answers in the data, because what customers do is what you care about. So that's spotting where the weak points are, where they're falling down, and it's also why you A/B test all of these things, right? So you're trying two different versions of a message or an onboarding flow, and you're seeing what do users actually do. Where the qualitative comes in is usually more helpful in helping you generate insight to come up with the idea behind a test, right? So it's things like, it's not that they said, oh, I would prefer a blue button to a green button. It's what words they use to describe, right? What language they're using to describe the problems they're having, how they generally approach something, where they said they came from. So the qualitative stuff is, you're really looking for insight there that's helping you get a better understanding of the customer to then generate a test to go off and test scientifically, if that makes sense. Because yeah, your instincts are right that you don't trust what they say, because they'll either lie, because famous, it's classic, they'll either say what they think you want them to hear, or they just don't know. They just don't know. Like, oh, if you were to be offered a ride-sharing app in a private jet, would you take it? I don't know. I have no idea. I'd say yes, it'd be cool. But then if I actually went to use the experience, oh, I have to go to a different airport. I have to do, who knows?
So how are you aiding app discovery? Like, how are you promoting your app, your particular company, for instance?
My own company.
Yeah, for app discovery. I mean, unless you're in the coveted, top 25 featured apps in the app stores, how are you sort of promoting that? I see a lot of apps actually in my Twitter feed these days with installs, like Lyft promotes pretty heavily on my feed. But
Yeah.
what are the strategies you're using to promote your app?
So the question is, what are we doing for promoting apps? And I'll just preface that by saying we're a B2B SaaS company. So we have a small number of customers, like we're trying to get hundreds of customers, right, who are marketers, who are promoting their apps, whereas you guys are trying to get tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions of app users. So if it's okay, I'll skip how we do it, because it's more interesting in how we see other people do it. So there's a couple of methods, yeah. Besides trying to find the app store editors and get them drunk, there's a few things. So paid acquisition definitely does work. Twitter install, Facebook install ads, and really the key there is like you need to approach that properly. So the results kind of compound and go exponentially. If you're doing okay, then you get a high rate for the ads. If your ads start getting clicked through better and people like it more, then Facebook discount the price for you because they like good ads appearing in the newsfeed. So it can have a nice circular effect. I can, without going too in depth, I'll just say do proper research on that, and if you're going to do it, kind of tackle it properly. Spend some time on it. The other, if there's a referral mechanism, if there's any reason that people within your app would be better if they referred friends, latch onto that and use it as best you can. And as part of the onboarding process, try think what is the quickest point that we can get somebody to where they would be really happy to refer a friend. And there's two reasons. So getting someone from referring a friend after 5 days down to 1 day, just the math it's one of those insane pieces of math, like, oh, if you fold a piece of paper 19 times, it reaches the moon. It's the same with the referral maths. It's just insane. Because if you wait 5 days, it means 2 friends and invite 2 friends, and then 5 days later 2 more friends. But if it happens after a day, then after 30 days, your user number has doubled 30 times instead of doubling 5 times. So getting somebody to refer friends as quick as is reasonable is a huge growth factor. And it also catches the people who sign up, play a game or try it out a little bit, maybe refer a friend, and then drop off and you never see them again. So if you can at least get them to refer a few friends before they leave, all is not lost. And that does referrals does a couple of things. It does that math, which is fantastic, but it also makes you able to spend more on your cost per acquisition. Because if instead of spending $1 to acquire a user, you're now, every user gets another 2.5 users. You're now spending $1 to acquire 1.25 users, and you're competing against everybody else who's paying to acquire these users. So all of a sudden, you can afford to outbid everybody else with your acquisitions, and that again is cyclical. So I'd say trying to collapse the referral cycle is hugely valuable. If you're interested in doing some morbid reading on it, read about how viruses spread and how much more deadly they are when it's like 30-day incubation. Like, that's where all the best research has been done, and it's horrific to do, but it really gives you a good grasp of how, like, the scariest viruses are the ones that reproduce quickly. And on a positive note, our apps, the most profitable apps are the ones that spread, and that's why we call it viral, right? Are the ones that spread quickly too.
Let's give Peter another hand.